question I get or hear all the time is, what's more important, technique or accuracy, speed or power? Does size matter? Well, obviously the answer is now honestly, it depends. It depends on you as a fighter. It depends on what you want to work on. It depends on who you're fighting. Really, all of them are important. Now, me personally, I'm about 5'8", 5'9", average height, and about 145 to 150 pounds. So about average weight. So if I got into an altercation, generally speaking, 50% of the time, it might be a person bigger than I am. Therefore, I like to focus a little bit more on good technique and accuracy. But let's talk about how technique tends to be over-exaggerated sometimes in the martial art world. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest lies I hear in the martial art industry. I especially hear this in the Krav Maga world and in the Jiu-Jitsu world. Now I know, you Jiu-Jitsu geniuses, you think you're God's gift to martial arts, but you have flaws just like everyone else. I love Jiu-Jitsu, I practice it all the time. But I hear this kind of lie / partial myth said to a lot of new beginner students, both in Jiu-Jitsu and in Krav Maga, so in my own industry, so I get it. And that partial lie or that partial myth is, hey, this is made for the little guy. If you have really good technique, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how big they are, how much power they have, size doesn't matter, your technique will win every time. That's a load of BS. You're lying to them. You're setting them up for failure. Yeah, technique is really important, but power and size totally make a difference. Don't act like it doesn't. Now, let's talk about an example to kind of further dive into the details of why power and size are important in a fight. So let's take Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo is the current flyweight and bantamweight champion in the UFC. He's about 135 pounds and 5'4". He's a small guy. Sorry, Henry, you're a small guy, though I'm sure you could beat me. Now, he is known for very high-level grappling and wrestling, very high-level technique. He's not exactly known for his power, and like we talked about, his size. Henry doesn't usually just knock guys out on the first hit. He wears them down with his high-level grappling and wrestling, and then he'll usually finish them off with striking or submission. On the other end, let's take Derrick Lewis, aka Black Beast. 6'3", 265 pounds. Literally almost double the weight of Henry Cejudo and almost a whole entire foot taller. Now, technique-wise, Derrick Lewis doesn't have the highest level of technique. I'm not saying he doesn't throw good technique when he's in the gym hitting pads, but if you watch him in his fight, he's throwing pretty big haymakers, looking for that one big shot. His technique compared to Henry Cejudo's, not quite as high. Henry's got the technique advantage. Black Beast has the power and size advantage. And not just an advantage, but a huge advantage, almost double of what Henry has. Now, if you put those two together and you put them in the octagon, who are you gonna put your money on? If you say Henry, you're an idiot. Stop being a troll. Black Beast is going to smash him into the ground every single time. Why? Because it's only gonna take him one good hit. If he gets him clean, that's probably gonna be the end of the fight. I'm not saying Henry couldn't not beat Black Beast or someone big and powerful like that, but it's gonna take him a hell of a lot more to beat Black Beast. It's gonna take him a lot more shots. He's gonna have to work a lot harder to get in close. Whereas Derrick Lewis, he really just needs one shot. Now, that doesn't mean Henry's a bad fighter, but it just is what it is. Now, does that mean technique isn't important? Well, no. Technique is still really important. Now, let's get a little bit nerdy. So let's take a look at two different kinds of people. Now, the good guy or girl, it's 2020, I don't want to assume, they typically look like this. We're looking at technique, size, power, and intelligence. And I don't mean what you got on your SAT score, I mean your fight IQ. Typically, they're a little bit lower on all four of them. They don't have technique because they've never trained before. They're not very big or powerful. I don't get a bunch of 6'2", 200-pound athletes coming to my class for the most part. And fight IQ, they don't have a lot of. That's why they're here. They're here to train. They're here to become more confident and know how to defend themselves better. Now, our bad guy or girl, as denoted by the angry face, they typically look like this. Every fight is different. Every person you get into an altercation with is going to be different. But for the most part, this is what we see. It's somebody that is bigger and stronger than you. They might not have a lot of technique or fight IQ because guys that train, those aren't the people you're going to get in fights with. But they do have a lot of power and a lot of size. They're bigger than you. As self-defense teachers, our goal is usually to try and improve these two. We want to improve technique and we want to improve fight IQ. This is especially important in self-defense as we need to understand a lot of different scenarios as well as just general context. Is it snowing? Is it slippery outside? Do you have kids with you? Fight IQ is very important for both the mental and emotional aspect of fighting. And we want to improve their technique. So as we start to do that, now we start to close the gap between the good guy and the bad guy. And now they have a better chance to defend themselves. What's also nice is, while I can't necessarily change somebody's size, but typically we can improve power a little bit. And power is going to come from good technique. So we can use that technique to augment their power. This is quite simple. If you don't know how to throw a cross, you're not going to throw a cross very well. You're not going to put the proper mass and acceleration behind it and have greater force and thereby power. But if you learn how to throw your body better and rotate and where to target, fight IQ, you're going to have better power for that strike in that moment in time. I don't think there's really anything to argue here. Better technique is going to give you better power. All of my big fellas out there, you're so big and strong. You're probably thinking, why do I need to learn technique if I'm a big person and I have a lot of power? Well, what if this happens? So here you are, big, powerful person. What happens when you run into someone just as big and powerful as you are? And maybe they did a few years of wrestling in high school. They have a little bit more technique than you do. All of a sudden, you're at a disadvantage. So, big guys, you still need to learn technique. Why wouldn't you? It's only going to make you a better fighter. Going back to our Henry Cejudo and Derrick Lewis example, sure, Derrick Lewis doesn't have as much technique as Henry Cejudo, but the guy's got good technique. When he's in the gym, he's throwing good technique. In his last fight, I saw him throw a jumping switch round kick. That takes technique and time to learn. So if you're big, you still need to learn good technique. Now, one other thing not mentioned on here is luck. I didn't have a fifth color to use, but this is what luck does in a fight. It doesn't care. Everybody has a fighter's chance, as they call it. They might slip on the ground, or they might just happen to get that perfect shot, even if they're not a trained fighter. Fights don't always go down how we expect them to, even after all our training. And that's just a fact of fighting, and it's just how it is. After all, there are no absolutes in fighting. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. But let's talk about how we can now implement this into our training. So let's take a look at this graph. No, we're not talking about supply and demand curves in economics, but kind of the same idea. Here we have power and speed. Here we have technique and accuracy. Usually in training, we're trying to figure out which one should we train more. The answer is kind of both. Now, typically with a beginner, I like to start at lower power and speed so that they can get good technique and accuracy. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I don't want them training at very high speeds because then they're typically going to have lower technique and accuracy, and I don't want them putting in negative, bad reps early on in their training because that's going to affect them later on down the line. I want them to get that good technique early on. Now, sometimes we'll do quick drills to get the cardio up or get their stress going. And in those cases, I do want them to go a little bit faster and put in more power and speed. But the question is, how much power and speed? We want to go about right here, where power, my marker is rolling away. Come back. I want them to train right here, right on this sweet spot, right where decent power and speed meets decent technique and accuracy. One of my favorite quotes I've heard when training is, don't train faster than you can accurate or accurately. That way, my student can still put in good power and speed, but not lose a lot of technique and accuracy. Now, this is what is cool about training. As students continue to train, this curve starts to shift. What I mean by that is as they train and get better, this curve shifts over this way. So now in those drills where I want good power and speed, but without sacrificing technique and accuracy, because of their training, they can start to do this at a higher level than before. As they continue to train, this curve will continue to shift this way, and they'll be able to train accurately and with good technique at higher and higher speed and power. Now that we talked about that, which of these is more important? Power, speed, technique, and accuracy? Well, at the end of the day, you should be doing all of them. Why would you only do one of them, you dummy? And you can't downplay one without downplaying the other ones. They're all equally important in fighting, and they work off of each other. For all my keyboard commandos, if you think I'm an idiot, go ahead and leave some comments down below. Or if you do have any suggestions for the future and what you'd like to see in our videos, please go ahead and comment, let me know. I want to know what you think. With that said, go ahead and axe kick the subscribe button, turn on those notifications, like this video, train perfectly, fight ferociously, and be ready.